the main news I kind of want to talk about, by the time this comes out next week, will be very old. The martial law in false Korea.
False Korea?
False Korea?
Well, yeah, because it's not true Korea.
The true Korea, of course, is the DPRK.
Yes.
And I, by the way, I say DPRK because I'm extremely woke.
Well,
I know that North Korea is a better country. At least
I think
their
that's a
people aren't
tanky
starving.
thing to call North Korea DPRK.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually a pretty big tell that somebody is going to, if somebody is saying DPRK, they like the DPRK.
Yeah, and in case people don't know, you're basing this off of somebody you actually spoke to who said...
it was a few years ago at like a May Day rally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he was like, had some sign about North Korea or DPRK, and I asked him about it. I have the clip, and he was like, oh yeah, like America's terrible. Like the DPRK is so great. At least people aren't, starving to death in the DPRK.
Yes. Who ever heard of anyone starving in North Korea?
No, I mean, I think you seriously actually asked him if he thought life was better in the U.S. or in North Korea.
Oh,
he
yeah,
was like,
that's what it was.
Definitely North Korea. Yeah,
Right.
and
Well, definitely the DPRK.
yeah, we were all stunned.
Yeah. Yep.
And this was not a Korean person.
No, it was not Yeonmi Park. Poor Yeonmi. But so South Korea, the President Yoon declared martial law out of the blue. No one saw it coming.
And this was
I don't know what he was thinking. It was if it was
in
coup,
the middle
it
of
was
the
a
night.
badly-
It was not the middle of the night, but it was at
late
night.
Monday
late
night.
Tuesday night, I think,
Tuesday night.
in Korea time.
Oh, in Korea time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it seemed so out of the blue that even his own political party was very much like, we don't support this.
Yeah, well, there was a vote the next day.
No, not the next day. There was a vote.
Like overnight. Like an
I'm
emergency.
getting confused because of my timeline experiencing this and their timeline. But yeah, so there was a vote about it. in
So
his
that
own
a
party.
few hours later, so the president had tried to use the military to block the National Assembly building, but 190 out of the 300 National Assembly members, their legislature, right, still made it into the building and unanimously voted to end martial law. And then people started gathering outside the National Assembly to protest. And then you had these incredible images of essentially Korean civilians reprimanding the military. Have you seen some of these?
A few of them.
Yeah, so there's a woman who was a news anchor or something, and she's scolding this guy who has like a fairly large gun that he's holding, and she's like slapping the gun away and going, like, how dare you? You should be ashamed of yourself, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then the president was like, okay, actually, no more martial law.
Well, I think he was required to, like, after the vote.
Yeah, but if you've already declared martial law because you say the assembly is rising up against you, and there are, pro-North Korean communist forces in your government, that you need to declare martial law to fight them.
Well, this is what's weird. And I know we're going to talk a bit about this a little later. But, like, Americans don't get political warfare. There are definitely, and we've covered this on the show, there are definitely North Korean and Chinese forces inside South Korean society and government trying to push things a certain way. It's same like in the U.S. where you have engagement type people.
Right.
So he's not wrong that like there are communists.
Oh, let me
inside the
give
gang.
you.
So President Yoon is a conservative, and one of the things that he's been doing over the last few years is he's been like changing the South Korea from being more pro-China and pro-North Korea relations to being more. So President Yoon has developed ties with Japan and with the United States and is anti-communist. And so these are things that the Chinese regime does not like. They're basically terrified of South Korea moving away from China's sphere of influence. And South Korea has been very heavily under China's sphere of influence for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're not saying that this justifies martial law or anything like that. Like this, guy, his wife is apparently being investigated for corruption. There could
Some
be a
top
lot of
officials as well.
there could be a lot of other things going on internally in the domestic South Korean politics.
And because
Right.
even though President Yoon's Conservative Party, even though he's the president, the Liberal Democratic Party has a lot. I think they have the majority in the legislature, so they've been blocking
won.
everything.
They won. It's called the Democratic Party.
Right.
So they're the Korean Conservative Party is the People Power Party, I think.
Which sounds commie to me.
Well, there may be no heroes in this story, but my point is only that I know what the Chinese Communist Party's perspective is, and they don't like President Yoon, and so they want to damage his reputation, go after him, take him down.
He won very narrowly the presidential election, and then the Democratic Party came back to win a really big majority in the legislature, and part of it was that Yoon had promised to do a kind of purge corruption. Corruption is a huge problem in South Korean politics. In fact, that's why several former presidents have been charged with things. Or
Wasn't there one who was involved in witchcraft, or was that just
I
a rumor?
Was that the one that was the religious group that may have been a cult?
I forget. Do some researching yourself. That's a wild thing.
Let's not talk about this on the show until we've done some research, I think.
Well, this is a good jumping off point for you, the audience, to join in on the fun of this show, is to research witchcraft, South Korea.
The question was it real witchcraft?
Okay. Before we go off the rails, I do want to give some information about how deep the CCP infiltration is in South Korea. So the Democratic Party, the opposition party in South Korea, they have essentially endorsed China's One China policy with Taiwan. So not like a separate One China thing like the U.S. has, where they're like, the U.S.'s policy is, okay, China says it's China, including Taiwan. Taiwan says it's China, including Taiwan. We acknowledge both sides say this.
Yeah.
Whereas China's version is
South Korea's version.
South Korea's version is China's version. No, not South Korea's version. The Democratic Party of South Korea, they have endorsed China's version, which is Taiwan belongs to us.
Yeah.
So they've very friendly ties with CCP officials. The Democratic Party has been in power for more recently than the Conservative Party, and so there have been civil servant exchanges between like young Chinese civil servants and young South Korean civil servants, like government officials, that they've been traveling and experiencing like stuff in the other country,
right?
And
they get the young Korean diplomats to come over, or civil servants to come over to China, go to karaoke bars, stay in hotel rooms where they may be videotaped.
Oh well, I don't know about that specifically, but they do have to go through training in Xi Jinping thought.
Yeah.
When they go to China, just so they learn. So it's kind of like.
The South Korean Democratic Party is very pro-China.
Right. They've accused the Conservative Party of provoking China by talking about Taiwan. Speaking of corruption, the Democratic Party's former presidential candidate was also convicted of violating election law and was sentenced to like a 1-year suspended prison term. So it's messy.
It's messy
in South Korea,
which is why it's false Korea, unlike the pristine political system of Juche.
Yeah, and then so a lot of
I hope that doesn't get clipped out of context.
This is why we need to put the podcast on our own website. So it's what else? So South Korea apparently has the highest number of Confucius institutes in the world, which South Korea is a small country.
Yeah.
And then there's also things like there are dozens of South Korean media outlets that carry CCP,
CCTV,
state-run media, CCP propaganda, People's Daily articles. The weirdest thing is that there was a mayor of a South Korean city I'm going to mispronounce this, Gwangju in 2023 tried to build a park in honor of the guy who composed the anthem of the People's Liberation Army and a marching song for North Korea because he thought it would bring Chinese tourists
Wow.
to his city.
That's a very specific thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's because the guy was from that city.
Yeah.
So you can't choose who your,
Elected representatives are?
No. I was going to say who your famous people who are communists are.
No.
Yeah.
Right, but like if you're from, I don't know, wherever Jeffrey Dahmer was from, like you don't have to build a park in his honor.
Oh, that's very true.
Stunning analogy. So the obviously the bad thing about this, well, the unfortunate thing about this is that President Yoon likely will not be president much longer.
Yeah, there's talk that he'll probably be impeached.
Yeah.
Because,
And so, and I mean, like, I don't know what the hell he was thinking with the martial law thing. Like, that backfired. However, but this will mean that likely the Democratic Party will get more power, and it is very pro-China.
So, and the CCP
Party.
has also been trying to, for many years, like, undermine relations between South Korea and Japan and South Korea and the U.S. So
Yeah.
it's harder to do it with South Korea and the U.S., but, now what has been happening under President Biden and, Japan and South Korea in recent years is trying to have an alliance between the three countries.
Mm-hmm.
And so now this makes it all that more difficult. I mean, I think Xi Jinping's pretty happy.
Probably.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of things that make him happy. I think he leads a difficult life, poor Xi Jinping. All the jar of honey is just out of reach.
In other news,